For over 2 weeks now, Nigerians have felt the strain of getting Naira notes from the banks, with some standing for long hours. Now, this has caused violence, tension, with some an exorbitant amount to get from the point of sale operators. Although the Central Bank of Nigeria gave February the 10th as the deadline for collecting old Naira notes, the Supreme Court has given an order restraining them from enforcing this deadline. But despite this order, banks, fuel stations, many supermarkets have stopped collecting old notes. In addition, Lagos State Judiciary has also stopped collecting old Naira notes as payment for the filing of court processes, saying this decision follows a directive from its bank. The governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria has also said that there is no going back on the February the 10th deadline. Joining us to discuss this issue is a lawyer and social development advocate, Olutu Bosun Oshifora. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast. Please help us understand, interpret this matter. Now, the CBN governor says that February the 10th deadline still stands, and because it wasn't joined in the case with the Supreme Court, so it is not binding on them. Help us understand, because we have seen some legal luminaries coming to say that that excuse that the CBN is giving does not hold water.
All right. It's unfortunate that the CBN, and particularly the CBN governor, is trying to play God in this matter. I've seen him come out a few times and, in a boastful stride. And even, I think the last one was when he came out and said that if you think he was going to extend the deadline and that he has bad news for them. And I'm like, with your position, you shouldn't be talking this way.
Manner.
So it's a case of once have I spoken, twice have you heard that all powers belong to me as far as this Naira redesign is concerned. And I think it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I've seen people come out to say CBN wasn't joined. Now, if you go back to the 1999 Constitution, Section 232(1 talks about the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has original jurisdiction on matters that relates to state and state, or state and the federal government, exclusively to the Supreme Court. Then also, if you go further in the same section, it talks about 232(1, that's on the original jurisdiction. 232 sub 2 now talks about the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, which is exclusive. That's from the Court of Appeal. All appeals go to the Supreme Court. So these are exclusive to the Supreme Court. Now, in this instance, some states have come together and then they have challenged the federal government and they've taken this, the matter to the Supreme Court. And basically, the crux, the crux of the matter is purely the Naira redesign and the whole thing that is happening as we've seen. Now, so the CBN is under the federal government.
Exactly.
Now, so it's like playing the ostrich and saying, it's not my business, they have not mentioned my name. And this is not the first time we're seeing something like that. I've seen, I think, a few years back, it must be your state, where a particular governor was taken out and reinstated by the courts. And the incumbent was, the one that was occupying the position was like, they didn't mention his name. So it doesn't concern him. And it's very funny, but at the end of the day, everybody had to comply with the court. Now, for me, the reason why I said the CBN governor is playing God is that there's a matter in court. If you don't even know the law, you have legal department that can tell you the implication of what you're doing. Let's even leave the suffering and what's going on the outside. This is law, and you know the import of law and obeying the law. If you turn your back to the law, you are facing chaos. You are inviting anarchy. Now, so you said this thing should stop on the 10th. There's a matter in court that is coming up on the 15th. Common sense dictates that you come out and say, since this matter is pending in court, we will wait on the Supreme Court's decision. Now, people have come up with all kinds of theories that that the CBN wasn't joined, this didn't happen, this is not a part of it. Whatever happens will form part of our jurisprudence, and we'll know how this works going forward. Because the law is dynamic. It's until certain things are brought to the fore that you actually understand, the standing and the footing of this particular thing. Now, so whatever it is, whether CBN was joined or not joined, this thing affects CBN. It's just a matter of time. CBN is even an interested party. Then whoever is in charge of CBN, the CBN is under the federal government. The federal government has been sued on matters that relates to you, something you have just implemented, and you're standing and boasting that you were not joined, so it doesn't concern you. You will go ahead with your thing. I don't think it's good for our policy. It is not good for the law, and it is not even good for the people occupying the position at CBN, because if they had come out to say that we'll wait on the Supreme Court, they haven't said anything beyond that. Everybody will hang on and wait for the Supreme Court. I mean,
They have not even acknowledged the Supreme Court.
You have not even acknowledged the Supreme Court or the powers of the Supreme Court or the powers of the law or the Constitution. That's what the CBN has done. And at the end of the day, if the Supreme Court rules otherwise, I don't know where they're going to put their faces. So, but for me, I think laws also, like Oksam said earlier on, laws are made for human beings, not human beings for law. I don't know what it is. Now, I don't know what it is they want to achieve with this deadline, but I think culturally and historically, we're a cash-driven society. Now, so when you want to change the culture of a people, you have to ease into it. It's not something you come that I give you 7 days and in this must happen, this must... No, even God takes time. Even God said, come, let's reason together. Now, there's no reasoning, there's no experimenting. You have brought a fantastic policy, no doubt. A lot of countries are going cashless. Now, but how did they get into it? I mean, even if we don't travel, even if we don't know what's happening, we don't live in America or the UK, we see what's going on there. The $100 bill was changed a few years ago, was redesigned from the old one. Up till today, you can confirm, they still accept the old $100. They don't give it out again, but this is years after. We saw when Britain moved from the paper pound to the polymer. It took about 9 to 12 months in a cashless society to phase that out. So in a cash-driven society, why do you want to phase things out in seconds? A lot of people didn't see this money, this newly designed Naira until this year. Now then, we operate a system where a lot of things run on cash. Now, we also have a system where transfer, even before this whole cash issue came on, you transfer, the other person will say, I've not seen it, then you know, like that. About 2 weeks ago, I was in one of the commercial banks and a man came with a customer. They held themselves like this. I'm not kidding. And he was like, you said you have money here. The bank told us that there was no network. Bank didn't have network. So forget your own phone. If the main person does not, the mother of the transaction does it, so what do you do with the children? You know, so they said they didn't have network. We were there for 3.5 hours.
Wow.
The man was like, meanwhile, what happened with those two was that he had given him goods, so they've taken the goods away.
So you can't go.
Payment. He was like, you can't go. We all stood there.
I must collect my money.
Banks closed by 4. We were there till 5:30.
My goodness.
I went for a different transaction, but I was like, oh, my case is different. It's small compared to this one. So I was enjoying the drama. In fact, the drama kept me on in the bank. So when I'm looking at it, that what kind of policy is this? Now banks are being burnt. People are going haywire. People can't eat. And you come and you euphemize the suffering.
And saying you shouldn't exaggerate it.
Then the same CBN, I saw a release from CBN. I've been careful with what I'm saying about them, but I just wait to see that, okay, this one is sanctioned by CBN. They said that any POS person that is collecting money above 200, they will arrest the person, they will prosecute the person. In the next paragraph, they now said that all POS persons will be compensated for the difficulty of getting the Naira. You're creating a problem and you're deflecting, you're blaming someone else for the problem. I saw a few videos and I told people that this is sponsored, with all sense of respect, that this is sponsored by the people creating this crisis. They're showing that there are stacks of money in the bank. That was what led to people burning banks and attacking bankers. Then they also said some people are spraying money at parties. How much do they take to parties?
Is
that let's even say there are 100 parties. in Lagos. Is that all the money they took there? Is that all we want to spend? Are you kidding me?
How do they even have access to that money?
That's the thing. So it's coming from them, but they're deflecting and pushing the whole thing to us. If you have a policy in place, 1 week of implementing this policy, people are burning down banks, banks are shutting down, people are lamenting, people can't get drugs, old people. I don't know what you want to do with this same policy. It's looking like an evil policy. Whatever it is, let's even say your policy is good. The implementation has been poor. The execution of this policy has been very poor. Then common sense says you should review what you have done, call back yourself, call back your team and say, okay, fine, let's put in place some extension. Laws are made for human beings, not human beings for the law. Right now, Nigerians are being made for this cashless policy that the CBN is driving. And I think the earlier they sit down and review it, fine, we all wait for the Supreme Court. But the earlier they sit down and review this thing, the better it will be for them. Because we're at a point where people are tired, people are frustrated. We saw how the NSAS thing played out.
Yeah.
And the same elements who took over the NSAS thing and made a mess of it are still very much around. Now the elections are upon us. Even the body that is saddled with conducting the election is already complaining based on this policy. So institutions and individuals are complaining. And one man is still standing and saying that once have I spoken, twice have you heard, I'm not going back on this.
Do you get a sense that we are on the cusp of a federalist crisis that we don't understand or don't know how it's going to end?
We don't even need what is coming from this thing. You see, I remember, if you look back with all the crises we've had, it's just one little thing that will trigger this whole thing. We've seen revolutions in this life caused by increase in the price of bread.
Yes.
What we're having is more than increase in the price of bread. And I'll give you a personal example. A few days back, I had to bring my mom to my own house because where she was, my mom is almost 80. She couldn't get the old Naira, she couldn't get the new Naira, and she was lamenting. And I'm like, see, CBN will not kill my mother for me before it's time. So I had to go and bring her in. How many people have that kind of luxury? There are parents that age who are still feeding their own children. Yes. The children can access money. Then you're creating a policy that people are dying, people are despondent, and you're not thinking of review, and you're calling that little
inconvenience. No, he didn't say that. It's politicians that are saying that.
Politicians
Article says little inconvenience. And he has stopped talking since then. He's talking as if there's nothing happening. Obisu said it's some inconvenience. He has stopped talking since then. And they all keep quiet as if nothing is happening. This is insensitivity. This is cold-blooded indifference.
You know, for me, let's not take the shine away from the benefits of the cashless policy. It's a fantastic policy that has been wrongly implemented. It's the implementation that is the problem. I think CBN didn't have the capacity or the what it takes to let this thing run smoothly. And they are not admitting to the fact that they haven't implemented this well. Because let's even assume that there are no cash. If I can transfer to you, then there's no problem. It's still same medium of exchange, right? You give me whatever you have and I'll pay for it through whatever means. That's fine. Now, before the whole thing came, transfer has had its own issues and problems. Now you can imagine everybody now getting on the network. We've always had our own network crisis. Now, so people will transfer is not going, then some people are even taking advantage of everything I've transferred to you. They'll show you some funny
things. Yes, look at that. There is a receipt.
So then
I had a guest here, I mentioned this day, who was trying to defend it one way or the other, trying to play balancing. I said, look, you can go to a restaurant. You can go to a restaurant. You finish eating your rice and dodo and everything. You have even had one 5 alive and taken everything. Then they say pay. You say you have You want to? There's no network. You're not leaving that place.
They will change it.
After you've eaten the money, are you eating the food? No, you must eat.
Pay.
You must pay before you leave. These are the kind of circumstances you have. Because many times when I go to places, anytime I want to do any electronic transfer, I always have a cash backup because it has happened to me before that, the thing delayed me. I had to go to a nearby ATM to collect money in order to pay because there was no network available. So you can imagine the situation now.
When this whole thing started, you remember when the Minister of Finance came?
Yes.
You said I didn't know about it.
She said she didn't know about it. So I'm wondering what is happening to the economic team. Then one thing that I didn't even find very interesting was the fact that they said the president was ill-advised on this thing.
Right.
I don't know whoever pushed that narrative out, but I think that's the worst part of what has happened. How do you say a president was ill-advised on an economic policy? Okay, let's even believe that happened. All right? And we have seen the ill-advice and the effect of the ill-advice. So why is the president holding on?
I said the other time.
This ill-advice.
I said the other time that Mike Tyson says that everybody has a plan until they get smashed in the mouth. And then when you are smashed in the mouth, you know that the plan is different. You're a boxer. If the way you want to go is a particular way, the only is it Holyfield gives you one in the mouth, then you know that there's something else. I have to change my strategy. But these people are not changing strategy.
No. Do you get, what sense are you getting from the president's reaction to this matter now? Because he said we should give him 7 days, and the 7 days has elapsed. The president has not spoken since then, and I believe that he must have been seeing and getting information with regards to the protests we have seen in certain areas. How some Nigerians are carrying out, irate youths are just carrying out one protest or the other with regards to this matter.
I think the president is lucky that he's president over a good set of people and a calm set of people. In some other countries, you won't have half of this before they will scatter everything in your face. And I'm not mincing words on it. People are suffering, people are going through all kinds of things. The president asked for 7 days. With all due respect to the president, and if we look at his antecedent, I think most times he's not somebody who rushes into decision making. But you see, it's not every time that the president is supposed to be slow in reacting to things. He's been lucky that people have taken this in good stride and they are still waiting. Everybody, even people who don't know what the Supreme Court is, everybody's waiting on the Supreme Court. And I think what the Supreme Court has done is to even help the president and help the polity and help the nation by giving a window where, people will still have something to look up to. If there was no pronouncement by the Supreme Court, if there's nothing anybody's looking forward to, I tell you at this point, maybe all of us may not be able to sit here because it just takes one person to trigger this thing. And before you know it, businesses, everything will be grounded. Banks are not opening. A lot of people now, commercial transactions are gradually coming to a halt. I think the president needs to step up and show leadership. He's promised 7 days, and nothing has happened in 7 days. I think stylishly he's waiting on the Supreme Court to see what will come from there. But I even expect a broadcast.
Right.
Yes.
From the president.
Even a statement.
I expect that. To pacify Nigerians, to tell them, okay, my people, this is what we're trying to do. This is what I've seen going on, but just give us hope. Because I think the president is a father, and we all have families. Every time I come in, my kids look up to me that, what's the next thing? Daddy, what's the direction? So it's whatever I tell them. There was a day in the course of this thing, I have a 10-year-old, and I was like, I didn't have money. She was like, hey, you have finished all your money. I said, no, I couldn't get cash. She now did like this. Because she knows that if my father doesn't have money,
it's finished.
It's finished. So I have to give her assurance. So the president needs to come and assure the people. Words travel a long way.
Right.
If you just tell them that, please give me so amount of time, this thing will fall in place, this thing will fall in place. Definitely to create a cultural change is not easy on the people. We've lived our lives in this particular way. In fact, I tell people that the people that are suffering this thing the most are the people who get tips.
We don't get tips anymore.
If I don't, I must have enough to be able to tip you.
True.
So all those ones, zero.
Banza.
So I think the president needs to show leadership, because someone wrote an article, a friend wrote an article, and he said that, say, whatever IBB did, nobody remembered it. They only remember June 12.
June 12.
Yeah.
That's human nature.
So, whatever good the president has done, if he doesn't manage this crisis well,
That's the only thing they will remember.
people will remember him only for this thing.
Yes.
The
It's
person
the only
who
thing they will
brought-
remember.
The person,
Just
you-
like they remembered in 1983 or so.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. You know what's funny? And it's amazing. Look at this tricycle. You know nobody calls it tricycle. They call it Mara. Mara is someone's name.
Yeah, someone's name.
That's what they will brand this money if the president doesn't handle this well. And they will remember the person who, they say this thing in Yoruba that the king who was there when things were prosperous, people will not forget him. The king who was there when things became chaotic, people won't forget him. And unfortunately, people will only remember you for one thing. If you mention Muritala, people will tell you Udoji reform and all that. That's what they remember him for. Some people don't like him. But a lot of civil servants felt, when this man came, he turned things around.
Yeah.
There's something they remember Obasanjo for. Yeah. There's something people remember. If you talk Abacha, they'll tell you, sawdust stove. Yeah. Whatever Abacha did, even the money he's sending from the grave, nobody is looking at that one. Yeah. But they only remember
People
the
just
suffering.
simplify you. They just simplify your legacy. That's what people do.
Because if you look at this president, if you talk infrastructural development, I think he stands out. But nobody will remember infrastructure when the stomach infrastructure
is not
taken care of.
Yes.
So I think the president needs to show leadership, and then the CBN really needs to calm down, because whatever they want to achieve with this, the grandstanding is too much. And if you look at it, the CBN is playing out his own script. When they started with this thing, the CBN said all you withdraw is 20,000 naira per day. Then the assembly came in and they jacked the thing up to 100. But we have come back to what CBN wants to do.
Zero.
So and
So
it's
you think there's a sinister motive behind all of this from the CBN?
If you put in place a policy and 9 people out of 10 in a room are complaining, and you are standing with that, then you have a motive that is not clear to everybody.
Clear to everybody. Exactly.
And the motive is not godly. I'm not saying it's satanic, but it's not godly.
If it's not godly, then what is it?
Well, I guess you just fill in the gap.
It's Mephistophelia.
Because whatever it is that you're doing, and then there are pockets of crisis everywhere. The fuel crisis is upon us. A lot of things are upon us. Then you have added this one.
They said on the fuel crisis, they said within a week. The week has passed, and we still have the crisis.
Then there's some element of deceit to how this whole Naira redesign policy is panning out. You said everybody bring your money. They will give you whatever you have brought. Then we have brought the money. Then nobody can get what he has put in there. It's looking trickery, you
deceived me.
Yeah, you deceived me.
Right.
I brought all my money, gave it to you.
When the president met with the governors, he told the governors that Emefiele told me that he had the capacity to print, and he gave me the cost, and I signed it. Now he's telling me that he wants to go and print abroad. That's what he told the governors, which was not reported.
I saw something about CBN not having, the Mint not having papers. I want to believe that didn't come from the CBN, that there are not enough papers to print the money, that they're in waiting line. I just wanted to believe that came from some blogs, but I've seen the news around that CBN didn't have enough paper to print. That's why we're having this crash.
No, but CBN has not even said how much it has released to the public. It's other people that are saying it, that they released
about 300 billion.
It's not CBN that said it. CBN says it has given enough money to the banks. Okay, tell us how much you gave First Bank so that we can hold the CEO responsible. Tell us how much you gave GTB so that we can hold the CEO responsible.
But you know what?
He has not said anything.
You know why I don't believe that? Somebody said the bankers are hoarding the cash. And I just say that, if you know how much banks make from ATM transactions, they have no business hoarding the cash.
Money because they're holding
because they make money per transaction that you make. So it pays them more to put those monies in those ATMs, because for every transaction you do, they make money off it. Now, so why would they not want to make money? You get into the bank, they can't give you across the counter. You get to the ATMs, they can't. There's nothing that can be done. So somebody is lying, and I don't think it's the banks. Because if the banks have money, they will give you. Their job is to give you what you're putting there. And then I don't think a bank will wait for their banks to be burnt down. Last week, I think one of the leading commercial banks shut down. Some are still, they're still not back at work. And do you know the volume of transactions they do per day? Do you know the implication on their books? So shutting down for almost a week, then I don't think it's the banks that's got the problem. It's the Apex Bank, which is the CBN, that is the creator of this problem.
I was in a bank last week. I was inside the banking hall, and they were stopping people from coming inside. And then the queue outside breached the entrance. You know, the gate, this thing with the cubicle with the circulating door. They breached it. My own apprehension was, if these people get so angry and they burn this thing, I asked them, do you people have an exit door for people inside this place? It was that bad. Before another arrangement was reached, somebody goes in, another person goes out, one person goes in, another person goes out. Before I was able to leave the bank.
So CBN is not telling the truth.
Now, INEC is saying they don't have cash. We are already counting down to the election. Are you seeing any implication towards the elections for both INEC and then the electorate?
With all sense of respect and responsibility, I don't know how these elections will hold in this situation. And if INEC has said that, then there's this thing we do in this country. We'll see trouble coming. Instead of announcing on time, you'll be shocked that if, I'm just saying, this is my personal opinion.
Right.
It's likely they'll postpone this election in the face of what's happening. Now, but they won't tell you on time. They'll wait till the 24th. They'll wait till the 24th before they tell you whether we'll go ahead or we won't go ahead. So that's the problem with this particular.
It reminds me of Fela's music. Trouble they come, younger the way can. But you they find palava, you they find palava, you go get to you. So we don't really know.
All right, it seems we need to go on a commercial break now. When we return, we'll continue the conversation. Stay with us. So before we went on the break, we were speaking on the redesign of the Naira and the fact that the CBN governor has come out to say that the old notes are no longer a legal tender from February the 10th, and the confusion that seems to be happening across the country with regards to that statement. And we've been speaking with a lawyer and social development advocate, Olutubosun Oshifowora. As it stands, although the CBN governor has said that Nigerians should not exaggerate this matter, we have seen pockets of protests and all of it. What can Nigerians do at this point? Should they not react? How should they just manage themselves at this point?
I think Nigerians have been calm enough, and I'm quite impressed with the turnout. And, I think also the governors too have tried. All we just need is somebody to step in and show leadership, really, because you can only stretch people for, that long, and before something else will happen. And I think everybody's trying to calm down and see what will happen. I think the president actually needs to step up. As for Nigerians have tried their best, and because it's hard to talk to somebody who is hungry. And so far they've maintained, and then people have come around, one another. Everybody's just trying to see how we can work around things. But you see, I can only help you when I've helped myself.
Right.
Because if I don't have money, you don't have money, he doesn't have money.
How do we help one another?
We can't help one another. Right. So people have shown we've tried. That's the thing. Because the basic things we do, the basic things you do on a daily, you can't do them. And people are beginning to look incapacitated.
Yes.
Like father is beginning, you can't give your child money, not because you don't have money. The father is beginning to look like, I can't take care of my family. And it's worse off when you know that I have money. You know, if I don't have money, I know how to just go about it. I know I have money and somebody is holding my money and he's not even telling me anything. So if I'm despondent, people who are under me, it's going to be worse with them. Now, so I think the government needs to, the president now, because kudos to the governors who have come out. You know, some of them are saying things that don't really make meaning, but just to placate the people that, don't worry, these banks, I'll seize their license. You know, they can't do that. Don't worry, these banks, I will revoke where they're staying. Just to show the people that I'm on top of this game.
I will penalize them.
Yes, I'll penalize, I will sack their MD. They can't do that. But people want to hear things like that. You know that. Then, you know, elections are upon the governors. So it's whatever you do that you'll be remembered for. So that's why you see governors just making some silly statements, you know, just to make sure that my people, don't worry, their bank MD, I'll remove him.
I wonder who is talking to these people, what they are hearing, what is Buhari hearing, what are the people around him hearing? Are they different? Because I remember the place in the Bible that says, and they turn their ears away from the truth, and then they start listening to fables. So are they listening to some fables about what is going on in Nigerian society? Are they hearing the wrong things? You know?
You know, the same holy book says that when the head, the king does badly, is
People
because
suffer.
he's surrounded by wrong advisors.
Yes.
There are people who, and we've heard that they misled the president.
Yes.
But I think it's time that the president came out and tried to clarify things and say this is because you see why we can't really exonerate the president is because he's done the same thing in 1984. So in as much as we want to put the whole blame on Emefiele, the man at the center himself, he has a pedigree in changing funds for a particular, and they gave the reasons. They said because of vote buying and terrorism, which are fantastic reasons for redesigning the fund so that they can mop up the crash in the system. Good. But the way they've gone about it, the way they've implemented this policy has worked ill rather than good. So I think they need to look at the implementation. They need to go back to the drawing board and allow things to
So at the end of the day, are you saying that the purpose for which this was set in motion in the first place is being defeated?
Absolutely. Because you're setting up the thing because you want the life of the people to be better. Let's look at it. You know, I talked about the merit. Because kidnappers know people have money, that's where they can make crazy ransom demands. These days, you can't tell even bank manager to go and bring 100,000. We just be laughing. Because you know that I can't find it. So you the kidnapper or terrorist, you have to strategize.
There's no market.
No, exactly. There's no market. So basically, you have to be. So for me, I think it's a good policy. Then you can't be carrying cash all around and everything. Fine, but you see, when the policy gets to a level where it's choking the person for whom you designed the policy, then there's need for going back to the drawing board and redesigning your implementation plans.
It's like the saying that the operation was successful, but the patient
died.
You know that you want to stabilize the Naira on the back of the people. You want to stabilize inflation on the back of the people. If the people suffer, what's the point of inflation?
Absolutely.
Inflation stabilization. What's the point of stabilizing the Naira when the people are suffering? There's no point.
When the country is not stable.
It's finance for finance sake or financialism. You know, that's what it is.
So you see, for me, I think also going forward, when we put people in capacity, we should be careful of all these voodoo economists and all these textbook leaders that we have. Some of those people just go and read some funny textbooks and come up. They want to implement the same way they saw it here. I remember back in the day, I think it was Soludo, shortly after they introduced the new, the higher denominations, Ghana did redenomination.
Yes.
And then they wanted to do the same thing. It took the assembly to stop them. That
Yeah,
you can't just
do
have
that.
the cost of doing this thing.
Yeah.
So all these textbook leaders that we have, they will throw this country in chaos.
Yes.
So we need to step up. I know the quality of people we put in place.
Understand the society first.
Right.
Any policy is
One
based
quick
on
question
society.
before we go. Not to preempt the Supreme Court, but whichever way it swings, what picture are you seeing?
I see the Supreme Court stepping in to help the people. The Supreme Court has already done that. And I think you can see how it will go. But I feel that whatever will come out of the Supreme Court is going to be for the best of the nation and for the good of the people.
All right, and that would be a fine place to leave the conversation.
Thank you.
Lawyer and social development advocate Olutubosun Oshifowora, thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure.
Thank
Right.
you.